back to Kiki's Closet. Today we are chatting with 4 fabulous performers who are currently helping inspire the next generation of musical theater performers. Oh my god, it's time for class, let's go!
Come on and come and play in Kiki's Closet today!
Please help me welcome these 4 fabulous theater artists that I am so lucky to call my friends. Eddy Cavazos, Angelo McDonough, Melinette Pallares, and Jenna Perez. Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining me here today at Kiki's Closet. I'm so excited to chat with all of you. This is a really fun group, so I know that we're gonna have a fun chat today. First question I want to ask all of you, what color is your heart today?
Oh, my heart is blue today. Like a nice blue, because I'm feeling really calm, and today I feel like I woke up and I've accepted whatever space I'm in.
Mine, I would say, is a nice seafoam green. It's also calm, but I've been feeling very creative the last 24 hours, which has been exciting.
Oh my god, wait, do you mean you're the color of my co-host?
That is me.
Oh my god,
That
hi
is my
Eddy.
heart.
I have to go for more of a minty green today. I have a window in my classroom. I was just looking at the trees, different moments. I've never spent that much time. They're kind of a lighter color, and I also had a matcha latte earlier, and I was like, yes.
I think I'm feeling a little sky blue today. Actually, I'm feeling light, and not just because I'm wearing this sweater.
What is your first memory of the magic of theater?
I definitely remember seeing Wicked at a young age with Julia Murney and Kendra Caspel themselves, iconic. But the show that really made me want to do theater was seeing my friends do Damn Yankees at the local theater. I saw them up there and I was like, I think that's something I might want to do. And here we are.
I was in 8th grade, and I went to New York, and we saw Chicago. And it was the first time not only that I saw how captivating an ensemble can be, but also when I realized that it was an actual profession. And that blew my mind. I was like, I thought this was only a hobby for people. And I was like, no, you can live your life this way.
Very early on, I think in middle school too, I saw the national tour of Cats. And I remember being very overwhelmed. I was confused. They were in my face, but before I knew it, I was sobbing. It was just I think the first out-of-body experience that I remember. It was life-changing.
So, because I grew up in Staten Island, I was close to the city. I remember in 4th grade, my mom took me to see the Broadway production of 42nd Street, and that was my first Broadway show. And I remember we sat in the orchestra, and just the curtain coming up, it was just that feeling of and I just would study the playbill. And it's just so funny that 42nd Street was my first show, because if you know me, you know I'm a horrible dancer. And that was I was I want to do this, not tap dance, but I want to do this.
So I've met all of you through performing, whether in school, auditions, or working. But you're all taking this time to help educate and inspire the next generation of musical theater performers. When did this first spark your attention?
I always knew I wanted to give back to my hometown of Harlingen, Texas somehow through theater. I never knew how. Growing up, there weren't a lot of theatrical opportunities. Even today, the closest Equity Theater is in San Antonio, and that's only one theater and 4 hours north of here. So the only experience I had were annual middle school Christmas musicals and then high school. And that's when I first noticed. I was like, I feel like I'm not getting everything I want down here. I ended up being lucky enough to go to a conservatory for 6 weeks in New York City, Cap 21, for a summer during high school. And that blew my mind. And I was like, hold on, kids are learning this in middle school up here, and I haven't done any of this till I was 17. So I already knew there was sort of a gap in theater education, especially down here. So I always knew I was going to be a part of it. I didn't know how or when. I thought it would be when I retired. But that's when I first knew there's something I want to do about theater education in the Valley.
I hail from the Rio Grande Valley, which is 20 minutes away from Melinette. I obviously started performing here in South Texas, a community theater. And that's kind of where I got a taste of being in charge, I guess, growing up in this community theater where once I was in high school, I was kind of overseeing the younger kids and the TYA productions and helping in that way. And as someone who loves being in charge, that was fun at the time. And then I kind of always supplemented my performance with networking opportunities, other performance artists back in South Texas who've kind of stayed here and built up TYA, things of that nature. So coming for the summers or during Christmas breaks and teaching workshops and teaching like little guest artist residencies with a program here in McAllen, Texas called All Star Theater, which is amazing. They do amazing work. And kind of getting my footing in that way was just like super fulfilling.
So I am from a town called Stoneham, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. And I was very, very fortunate and lucky enough to grow up with a regional theater in my town. So it's like a 5-minute walk away. And they had this youth program in the summers and in the winters. So I started doing that after my best friend at the time in middle school was like, oh, well, I'm doing this in this summer. Do you want to join me? And I was like, I don't really know if I like theater, but sure, I want to be with you. So of course I ended up loving it. In high school, the artistic director of the theater was like, do you want an after program type of job? And you'd essentially be in charge of the youngest kids in the program until their parents get off of work. And I was like, absolutely. And of course, I just fell into it and loved it. And that kind of started my love for working with kids.
Kind of similar to Angelo, I was really lucky to do community theater. My mom put me in theater camp when I was in elementary school, and I continued with it through high school. The director had said, do you want like an after school job my junior year? And I started working as like her assistant in a private theater company that she had. But I had always like looked up to the older kids when I was younger. And I was like, I want to be in charge and boss people around to their places. And then they actually hired me to be the assistant director the year after I graduated high school. And then I just stuck with it.
Angela and I go way back. We were freshman roommates in college. And 10 years, baby. You've recently found this wonderful group called the Story Pirates. Will you tell us what that is all about?
Story Pirates is an awesome theater company, essentially. They do so much more than that. Essentially, what Story Pirates is they celebrate the words and ideas of young people. So we have stories submitted from kids all over. And what we do is we travel to schools and around the country and perform them, turn them into musical sketch comedy acts, which is so cool, especially to go into schools where we know the kids have written some of the stories, to see their faces, have their stories performed on stage. It is super awesome. So I've only been with them for like a very small amount of time, but it has really changed my life.
You did a recording with them.
Yeah.
You're still creating content even during this time when you can't be in schools in person.
Absolutely. There are a lot of different facets to what we do. There's the touring and performing aspect. There's also a very successful podcast that they've been doing for a long time that's featured like Julie Andrews and Lin-Manuel and Kristen Bell. And we have 3 albums out, 3 books. It's kind of like really blossomed over these past couple of years. It's been really cool to be a part of all of those different facets. But when we went digital, we would do something like this. We would take the structure of how we would put together shows and go into schools and do them, but just do it for Zoom.
And in those schools, we've got so many wonderful theater artists and theater teachers. Jenna is working in the New York City public schools, and Eddy and Mel are in Texas working in the public schools there. What has this experience like been for the last 9 months? How have you adapted your teachings and the way that you speak to the students after all that, you know, we've been through as a country?
Throughout this past 9 months, first of all, I adapted my teaching in that I didn't know I could teach at all. I was just kind of thrown into it, and with a new program, which is at a middle school called Gutierrez Middle School of Arts and Sciences, and this is brand new. And imagine putting on a program mid-pandemic, but what was great about the digital aspect of it, it was getting to know everybody sort of on this level and inspiring and having them speak more on their point of view and their feelings throughout this time. So it was more of like a way of processing our current situation. I was able to give them a lot of exercises. I would sort of get them to here and now and be like, hold on a second, like, I'm not feeling this. I'm there to say, that's okay. Let's use that. Let's make something beautiful out of it.
I've never been the level of tired that I am being a teacher, I will say. The work that goes into it is crazy, but being a first-year teacher in the middle of a pandemic has been crazy. I feel like I, as a person who goes through life and as a friend, I try to be someone who's attentive and is a good listener and tries to connect or to empathize with what's going on. And I've kind of just adapted that to my teaching because I see so much of myself and specifically the demographic that I'm working with. I'm like an older brother. I'm not old enough to be any of their fathers, but I think they appreciate that too. I think that there was like an instant connection in a way with my students. I teach at the high school level. The analogy I keep giving, so like living in New York, it's crazy how like one day I was responsible for my own happiness. And then the next day, the impending doom of 40, 15 to 18-year-olds is just like resting on my shoulders. And I know that that's a really high stakes way of looking at it, but My biggest fear was leading someone astray or saying the wrong thing, right? I think these are such formative years and we're in the middle of a pandemic. Everyone's a little on edge. So I've been trying to come at it from the approach of like, yes, let's learn, let's be fierce, all the things, but I'm also here to listen to you, see you, hear what you need, and just keep it real with you and be honest.
I teach a few age ranges. So it's been interesting. I've never taught virtually. I've been teaching for 10 years, but in person, I do my own private voice lessons, acting lessons here. I have my own like little base of clients that I have, which are mostly high school age, but I also work in public schools, and that's like kindergarten. So it's tough to do a kindergarten class virtually, like a chorus kindergarten class, because they get up, they run around the classroom, they don't want to turn their camera on. So it's definitely give and take and being able to roll with the punches, because I can have a whole lesson plan, and if they're just not in the mood, you just have to go with it. But with the high school kids, kind of like what Eddy was saying, I think like so many of my students are filled with anxiety because of just the world we're living in. And so it's been so amazing to see like how we sign on and they seem like they're in like, you know, really, really down. And then like we start to sing, and like the release that they have of how like it just changes their whole mood. And for me, like I feel like, I'm sure you guys can agree, I've been like anxiety ridden myself. And so for me, it's such a nice escape to be like, you know what you feel doesn't matter right now, because you're supporting them and they need you right now. And I think that's really been also healing for me, to be like, okay, it doesn't really matter that you're freaking out about this. Like you need to be there for them, and you guys are just going to connect for an hour and do that through singing and through acting. And I think it's been really interesting. And then I also work in a high school, and we're really excited because we're going to try to do our auditions virtually. We just had them send a bunch of tapes. We're going to try and mount Bonnie and Clyde. We're going to see, we're going to be hopeful. And if we have to do it virtually, we will. We're really excited. And it's just giving the kids something to look forward to.
I just really want to say real quick, I went through grade school, high school, and college, and I never had a person of color teaching me. Except for one professor I had in college, Daphne Seagray, who had an amazing course that helped celebrate diversity in theater. So it's really cool to talk to you. Being a person of color, having someone to look up to that is teaching and talking about feelings is really, really cool. So I commend you for that. I want to know something that working with kids has taught you.
I have found so much joy in the work that I'm doing. I have connected with so many kids on so many different levels. The humanity that I've seen in these kids reaffirms that hopefully we're headed in a more positive direction. It makes me feel like I'm exactly where I need to be. Even in the most uncertain time in the world, I'm so validated with the work that I'm doing and the quality of work that I'm doing. I'm here by, I thought, which was a happy coincidence, but I'm loving education, and I want to keep working in education. And it's gotten to the point where that and like my personal performance aspirations are pretty much like neck and neck. I've just been so affected by these kids, and maybe it's because I'm in a very vulnerable place too right now with the state of the world, but I'll take it. I've learned a lot about myself. I'm much more patient than I thought I was, and my resiliency has been tested, but it's come through for me every single time.
I have felt so empowered by these kids, these middle schoolers who I spend most of my time with. And going into it, I was like, I'm not going to survive middle schoolers, but they show up every day regardless. And like, yeah, they're moody. Yeah, okay. But this is a space for that. And just because they're there, maybe they don't feel like doing the exercise that day. Maybe they don't feel like going through their monologue that day. They still show up, and they've allowed me to assume roles that I never thought I would be in. First of all, teacher, also like stage manager. I didn't know that before this experience I'd put myself in a box as like just performer. I was like, no, this is what I do. I don't do anything else. And these kids are like, no, you can be all of that. And at the same time, oh my gosh, having them do these exercises that I've done repeatedly and then have something click within me. I'm like, I have never seen anybody do something that way. They've just empowered me. They've made things click. They encourage me and they keep it fresh and fun and honest.
Hope is huge. Other than Story Pirates, I'm also a full-time nanny for 3 kids under 10, and I'm with them every day. So to navigate through the pandemic and Black Lives Matter and all of these very important things that are happening right now, I get the questions all the time of what's going on because they're very aware of what's happening. And to go through virtual school and all of that stuff. But it gives me so much hope because the oldest, she's in 1st grade, and They have classes at her school that are talking about your feelings and self-reflection, and they're being very on top of what's happening in our world and in our society. They're focusing so much on gender and what does that mean and how to navigate that. So I can't even imagine having classes like that when I was that age in first grade. It's so inspiring, so hopeful, and to have them come to me and ask me those questions and I feel comfortable enough with the parents to answer them in my truth, it's magic. Overall, I just have so much hope for what these kids are learning these days. And I'm so happy that I'm able to share my experience with them.
I think it's been really interesting during the pandemic because I feel like my kids showing up has forced me to show up. And I think that has been the best thing for me too, that like we're kind of leaning on each other during this time. And I'm just like so inspired that they're still getting ready for college auditions and they're still getting ready to build their book. And some days like I sign off with a student and then I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I'm gonna sing. I'm gonna get out my book and I'm gonna sing. Meanwhile, the day before I was like laying on the couch the whole day, like crying about what's gonna happen, like with everything that's going on in the world. And then like you sign on with like a 6-year-old who like wants to sing tomorrow and you're like sobbing and you're like, yes, there's hope. I've really been grateful for my students because I really feel like they pulled me out of a funk some days. And I think that there's also been a lot of conversations about mental health and like anxiety and, you know, obviously we're all feeling it. I like reached out to a bunch of my students and I'm like, would you guys want to get on a Zoom and just like talk every month and just sing, just like a support group, just if you feel like you want to do it through a song. And like, I was so like overwhelmed by how many people were like, yes, I would love to do that because I feel better after I sing my favorite song or I watch like a YouTube clip of my favorite Broadway show. And so it really like is inspiring and it gives you hope. We're going to be back and it's going to be different and it's going to be better.
And wow, these kids are so lucky to have all 4 of you helping them grow into better people and into better theater artists. And I am so lucky to have all 4 of you in my life. And I am so grateful to have you here in Kiki's Closet. Thanks for spending the day with me. I love you all so much. And I can't wait to see you in person in 2021. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Kiki.
Come on and play in Kiki's Closet today.